Hi and welcome to Drum Programming 101 in Bitwig Studio. As a new user to Bitwig, it might be hard to even know where to begin if you want to create the drum tracks or beats. How do you load the drum machine? Where do you find the samples? Are there even any loops? Now don't panic, don't worry, you're gonna learn all about drum programming in this video, so make sure you watch until the end. Let's take the tour. Right, so first out, there's a few different ways that we can add the drums and drum programming to a Bitwig project. First, we can obviously use complete drum loops. That's like finished drum samples, drum loops. Secondly, we can also add a drum machine, which is a native plugin within Bitwig Studio to host our different drum samples like kicks, snares, claps, hi-hats, cymbals and everything. And we can also add something called a step sequencer and sequence our drums. Now the fastest way to get some drums into Bitwig Studio is probably using the rightmost browser and find some audio loop or drum loop. Looking at the browser tab, we currently see everything. That means we see presets, we see all the different devices and plugins available in Bitwig Studio, and samples and clips and everything. Okay, the default filter here in the browser is everything. That means that you will see all the different audio samples, you will see devices, plugins, and all the different clips and stuff that's available here in Bitwig Studio. And before you do anything else here, you must make sure that you have installed some of the excellent sound content that comes bundled with Bitwig Studio, because there's actually plenty of drum loops and samples and effects and stuff that's not available instantly. So press this button all to the left, show all sources, and you get to see all the different packages available in Bitwig Studio. And as you can probably see here, I don't have many of the packs installed, but I do have the magnetic drums installed, which is basically a sound pack containing tons of great sounding hip-hop drums and drums that we can basically use in any type of genre. So we're gonna make sure that we install the magnetic drums, and as you can see, if we press this pack, we're gonna filter by the magnetic drums pack and see all the different samples and loops that's contained from this pack. Right, so let's take a quick listen to some of these loops. So as you can see, it's quite an extensive list of loops and samples here in the magnetic drums pack. And if you look at the bottom here, we can see the BPM of the loop. And you can also see how many beats or how many measures this loop is in and what kind of quality. And there's also these like single shot hits. Yeah, so when you find a loop that you like, you can just drag this to your arrangement on an empty track, and you will have that audio clip. And as you can see, it's also syncing to the measures or the beats of this project. So with this loop, we get two measures. And it's also important to point out this little icon here, this little selection we have here for how we want the loop to sync to our project. By default, you can see these are synced to project. That means that we will stretch the audio to align with the project. And that's why it's aligning to the two bars here. Although the loop is in 118 BPM, but we have the project set to 128. So it's aligning perfectly with our grid. But if we instead change this and change it to original speed neutral or original speed raw, take a look at what happens when we try to import the same sample. Now you can see it extends beyond our grid. So it's a really good practice when you're importing loops to have this set to sync to a project. It's just gonna save you some time syncing up the loops to work perfectly with your grid. Another feature I think is really important to point out here when you import loops like this is that you need to be aware of the audio playback engine for the different clips, because you can have different audio playback engines or stretching methods depending on how you set the audio playback engine. So if we select this audio clip and go into the inspector panel and look below audio event, we can see that the stretching mode is default to stretching mode. Now this is not the optimal stretching mode for audio loops, because as you can see, if I lower the tempo here to like 90 BPM or something, you will start to hear these artifacts, and it sounds almost like a chorus or a doubling effect on the transient hits here. So a better audio stretching mode, if we select the stretching mode and select the elastic, which is a transient preserving stretching mode. And we take a listen at the same BPM. So this is a 118 BPM loop that we play back in 90 BPM. So it's a slower tempo. You hear a lot less artifacts compared to the stretching mode. Not very good. So be aware of the audio playback engine that you select for imported loops. Okay, so that's some of the samples and loops contained in the the drums kit, and how you can import these and use them in your timeline and arrangement in Bitwig. Now, if you want more like acoustic drums or more hard-hitting drums, I actually have a few packs, and you can check them out at store.morningdewmedia.com. We have the Hit Me Hard Volume 1. Let's take a look at that one. The Hit Me Hard Volume 1 drum kit contains some custom drum recordings from my Pearl Master Custom Drum Kit, and also some Zildjian cymbals. And there's also a bunch of loops in there in different tempos from 85 to 175 BPM. Okay, so next in line we're gonna look at another method of getting drums into Bitwig, and that is using note clips. So let's delete this track, and we're gonna go into the rightmost browser again. But this time we're gonna go to Samples plus Clips. So press that tab, and we're gonna filter by note clips. You can see we get this blue icon where you can see some small like notes in there, and that's MIDI data clips. But these clips also contain information on devices used to create the clips. So they might load a sampler or a drum machine containing multitude of samples. So the red ones are audio samples, and the blue ones are MIDI data, and in combination with samplers or drum machines or stuff. Let's drag this fast forward breakbeat basics into our arrangement, and you can see it beautifully lines up with our grid. And a little tip here, if you want to line up your loop region here, we can just select the clip, press Command and L, and you automatically make the selection around that MIDI clip. And if we select the track here, we can see this has loaded a drum machine for us, and the drum machine contains all these different samplers. So you can just select one of these slots, and we get to see the contained sampler within that slot. So all these different slots in the drum machine have separate sample players. And if we mark this track for recording, we can actually trigger these different slots with our MIDI keyboard or MIDI controller. For my demo today, I'm using this X-Jam MIDI controller from ESI. It's a very tight, minimal, sleek MIDI controller that has these little pads, which has a very nice feel to them, and you also get a bunch of knobs here, which you can use for MIDI CC and control parameters in Bitwig. But like us, we don't need to do any drum programming when we import these note clips, because we already have a little pre-programmed beat. And we shall set our project tempo to 140 BPM, as suggested here by this note clip. And as you will see here with the note clips, if we increase the tempo, for this particular sample, it will not work when we increase the tempo, because all these different clips are actually triggering a sample or a loop, and that loop might be in another tempo. So be aware of what kind of note clips you import. So we're gonna head down here in the browser list and load up another kit or another note clip. Let's try this one, Legend 808 Uke beat, and drag this to an empty track, and we can delete that previous track. As with the previous one, we can see it lines up perfectly with our grid. Press Command L to loop around the region. But compared to our previous note clip, you can see that this one will line up perfectly, even though we change or increase the tempo. And that is because these drum slots contain single-shot samples rather than a drum loop in each drum slot. So that's the difference between these different drum machines. So it is a particular drum machine where we have single hits in the drum samplers. It's going to work perfectly to change the tempo. So even if you want to have a very slow, like a hip-hop kind of tempo, it's gonna sound just fine. Okay, so we had a look at importing drum loops, and we also looked at using note clips. Now next up we're gonna look at using a step sequencer. There's a really cool step sequencer in Bitwig called Stepwise. Let's get rid of the track, press backspace or delete, and we're gonna add a new instrument track. And on this track we can press the B key or press that plus sign at the bottom, and we're gonna load up the drum machine. And at the rightmost side in the browser, you can see this little arrow. That means that there are presets for the drum machine. So pressing the arrow will take us to the presets for the drum machine. And if you scroll down a bit, you will see the VO, which is your electric drum kit. And then you have the V8, which is a 808 kind of drum kit. And then we have the V9, which is a 909 kit. But let's load the V8 kit. And let's activate record on the track. So we're busy. So we have a tight 808 drum kit. So we instantly have a great sounding drum machine with different drum engines in each of these slots in the drum machine. You can see if we press the kick, we get to see this V8 kick, which is a device, a synthesizer device within Bitwig that generates 808 kicks. So you have a lot of control over the shape and the form of the sound. Just increase the drive if you want a more kind of hard style kick. And the same goes for the snare. That's a snare synthesizer. Right, so next up we're gonna load up the Stepwise step sequencer, and you need to add this before the drum machine, because the drum machine receives MIDI either from your arrangement timeline here or the clip launcher. So the MIDI will go from the clips in your timeline down to the device chain. And after the drum machine it's gonna be audio, so prior to the drum machine we need to add a Stepwise sequencer. So press the plus sign before the drum machine and search for step, and there we have the Stepwise. And that's basically a step sequencer, so we can just press play, and it will trigger that sequence that you see in the Stepwise sequencer. And we can just add different hits like this. So C#1 will be this electric snare. And we can add some hi-hats. Can change the rate of the different tracks, and then add some fillers up here. But if you don't want to program your own step sequence, you can just press the folder, and there's actually a bunch of like starter patterns. So we can take this bossa nova pattern. Fire up a drum and bass pattern, but we need to increase the tempo to something more drum and bassy, like 175. Now, using the step sequencer, or the stepwise here, might be a little bit like static when we start to have this all throughout our track. So it's a good practice to add some automation to some of these parameters. Maybe get rid of like the hi-hats here for some sections. But you can just do that by recording automation like this. So now we have hi-hats on the first measure, and then on the second measure we mute the hi-hats. And you can of course do this to any of these parameters. Maybe automate the rate of some of these tracks, the separate sequence tracks, or automate the volume. So this is the volume for the tracks. And you can experiment with these different parameters, maybe the timing offset and other stuff here to get the variation into the step sequence throughout your track. So yeah, that's basically another way of getting drums into Bitwig Studio. Right, so let's get rid of the step sequencer here and sequence our own little drum sequence. So we're going to use the same drum kit, but we're going to create a MIDI clip, so just to make a double click anywhere in the timeline like this. And we're going to click that clip, and we get this grid where we can enter our drum pattern. And you can see this like darker line. That means it's the beginning or the first beat of a bar. And if for some reason your clip opens in piano roll, the piano roll, like you probably know, look like this. You have this like piano roll to the left side. You can always just change it to the drum editor view by clicking this little icon. So let's enter a little beat. We get some kicks on the first bar, on the first beat, and on the third beat we also get a kick, and then the snare on every second beat. And maybe move the kick to the side like this. And yeah, we can repeat the same pattern for the next measure. Take a look at where we have the hi-hats. So we have the closed hi-hats. On a normal general MIDI kit, you have the F sharp as your closed hi-hat, you have the G sharp as a foot hi-hat, foot stomp hi-hat, and then you have the A sharp as the open hi-hat. But for some reason, Bitwig chose to set the closed and open hi-hat to D and D sharp. So we can just program a few of these. And yeah, let's make a long note like that. And if you want to copy these quickly, you can just select a few of these, and you get these white lines around the selection. Press Command D to duplicate that selection. Yeah, so you can see it's quite easy to program a simple beat in Bitwig, but how about if we want to introduce more like variation and a human feel to this? There's actually a function called operators in Bitwig that we can use to infuse more human feel to this. So let's select this D1 note, which is a little bit longer. We're actually going to extend this note a little bit longer like this. And take a look in the inspector panel. We have something called operators. The first feature in the operators is the chance. And if we lower this, it will be a lower chance for this particular note to trigger. So if you set it to 0%, this is obviously not going to trigger. But if we set this note to 50% chance, it will be a 50% chance for this note to trigger. And if you select a few of these like more rapid hi-hats and set them to 50% or 30% or something, you get a little bit more variation into the clip. But there's more stuff we can do. Let's select that long D1 note again and look at the second operator called repeat. If we activate this one and drag upwards, so changing from off to some higher number, like 8 or something, you can see we get this note to be chopped, and it will be played in a repeated fashion. So it's super easy to create like rapid trap hi-hats. Let's do this with this later hit too. So now, if we take this clip and repeat it a few times with Command D, maybe like 6 times, and we select all these and press Command L to loop the whole rhythm here, and if we press play, you're gonna hear a lot of variation throughout this piece. Okay, so that's drum programming 101 in Bitwig Studio, and how you can quickly get drums into your projects in a few different ways. So you can either use drum loops, you can use single shot drum samples to build your beats, or you can use MIDI clips, or a step sequencer. So if you have any type of questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section, or if you have any requests for upcoming topics or videos on this Bitwig channel. Now, if you want to learn more Bitwig Studio, I have a few classes like the Bitwig Studio Masterclass, we have the Bitwig Ambient Mastery course, and also now lately the Bitwig Grid Unlocked course. And that will teach you a lot more and the foundation how Bitwig Studio works. So go to edu.morningdewmedia.com and enroll one of my courses and learn more about Bitwig Studio. Okay, so that's all for today. I'm Matthias. See you in the next one. Bye.